The chair of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Adam Schiff, Democrat of California. I wonder, Congressman, how you think about what happened a few months ago, that episode, which seems like all things on the other side of this fence in time of before and after the pandemic hit the U.S.
Well, there's one thing that really, I have to say, haunts me from that trial, and it was before that snippet that you showed, where we knew we had to answer the question to the senators, okay, essentially, House managers, you proved him guilty. Does he really need to be removed? After all, we have an election in 9 months. How much damage could he really do? And we posed that question to the Senate, and we answered it by saying that he could do an awful lot of damage. But frankly, Chris, I don't think we had any idea how much damage he would go on to do in the months ahead. There are 50,000 Americans now who are dead, in significant part because of his incompetence, because of his inability to think beyond himself and put the country first. I don't think we would have ever anticipated that his brand of narcissism and his brand of incompetence, sometimes his brand of malevolence, would be so fatal to the American people. But probably, the strongest echo of what we were talking about during the trial was when he was earlier talking about how he didn't want to return the calls from governors. He didn't want his vice president to return calls from governors that weren't saying nice things about him, that really weren't saying things about him that he could then turn into campaign commercials, as indeed he has. That was such a profound and disturbing echo of what he tried to do with Ukraine. So sadly, as we pointed out during the trial, a man with no moral compass will never find his way, and this president certainly hasn't.
What I'm struck by as I remember back and think about that then and now is that the one argument it was not a very good argument that Republicans made, but it was at least granted the facts such as they were, defensible in that way, which was that, well, he didn't really get away with it in the end, right? That it all didn't come to some big geopolitical explosion, and he didn't actually get them to roll over and do the interview to go after his chief political rival. It was kind of a near miss. And I keep being haunted by that because it was true. And the stakes of it ultimately and what happened, it did damage our relationship. But here it did happen. There was no getting out. The stakes weren't small. It wasn't a near miss. We got hit.
Well, that's exactly right. And I have to think that his disbanding of that pandemic office within the White House and the National Security Council that was meant to be a tripwire for a potential pandemic that had been established under the Obama administration, he had to get rid of because it was a product of the Obama administration, and the fundamental insecurity he has towards his predecessor meant he had to do away with anything associated with President Obama. Well, that left the nation unprotected. And when the virus did hit, all of the happy talk, all of the wishing it away, all of the leaving our country vulnerable because he thought that was politically advantageous was so true to form. His character will not change. He won't change. And now it has had such tragic and deadly consequences.
This idea about, what can you do for me or not, everything being dependent on favoritism and cronyism, which is actually the way that, before a lot of reforms to the U.S. government, particularly in terms of the instantiation of the civil service in the late 19th century, that a lot of the federal government functioned, a lot of corrupt machines in city politics and states have functioned. But this headline today, this is in the midst of the pandemic, that connections matter for getting crucial equipment. Want a mass contractor some ventilators, a White House connection helps. What do you think about the ways in which life-saving, crucial information and equipment are being apportioned around the country? Can you put any faith that is being done based on science or sort of neutral standards?
Well, you really can't. You can't have confidence with this president that either contracts are going out to those that are most capable of producing the gear instead of cronies or friends of the president. You can't have confidence that money that's going out to preserve jobs in industry is going to go out on the basis of need rather than the basis of favoring friends and punishing enemies. You can't have confidence that ventilators are being allocated to states or protective gear on the basis of those states that are most in need. You simply can't have that confidence with this president. There's too much evidence to the contrary. That's not how he thinks. Indeed, I think he thinks that people that operate that way, that operate in the national interest, not their personal interests, are somehow dupes. But that is just not who he is. And that's not going to change. So, we have I think, a desperate responsibility right now to do everything we can in Congress to oversee these expenditures, to use what leverage we have in the budget process to insist on accountability. But he is true to form. As he was retaliating against whistleblowers months ago, he is retaliating against them now. As he was going against the inspector generals months ago, he is firing them now. And you can only imagine what he will try to do to interfere with the investigation involving Dr. Bright and his complaint that the administration was pushing this cure that turns out in the early experience in the VA to be doing more harm than good.
Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Chris.